The quantum plague began with a whisper. On the crystalline world of Proxima Vi, a child of the silicon consciousness noticed that her thoughts were fragmenting. Her neural pathways, perfectly engineered over 10,000 years of technological evolution, started showing microscopic irregularities. Within 3 days, the entire silicon-based population of the planet descended into chaos as their quantum neural networks collapsed. Dr. Sarah Chen stared at the holographic report floating above her desk in the United Earth Science Division, her dark eyes reflecting the shifting data streams. She had read it 17 times now, each review revealing new patterns that simultaneously fascinated and terrified her. The plague had spread to 12 species across 37 star systems in just 2 months. Each victim shared one common trait. Their biology or consciousness relied on quantum coherence. Dr. Chen. The soft chime of her AI assistant interrupted her thoughts. The Galactic Confederation representatives have arrived. They're waiting in the quantum-shielded conference room. Sarah straightened her simple lab coat and ran a hand through her short black hair. Thank you, Araya. Did they bring the samples I requested? Yes, Doctor. Though I should note their body language suggests extreme discomfort at being here. Sarah allowed herself a small smile. Of course they were uncomfortable. Earth was considered a backwater, barely worthy of Confederation membership. Their technology was quaint, their biology inefficient, their thinking chaotic. Yet here they were, because their precious quantum-engineered civilizations were falling apart. The conference room door whispered open at her approach. 3 figures waited inside. Ambassador Zilax of the Silicon Consciousness, their crystalline form refracting light in complex patterns. Medical Director Iku, a being of pure energy contained within a sophisticated field generator. And Dr. Ven, a more traditionally organic alien whose 6 eyes blinked in different patterns as they processed information. Thank you for coming, Sarah said, taking her seat. I've reviewed the data you sent. I have questions. We have no time for questions. Iku's energy form pulsed with agitation. 17 more worlds reported infections this morning. Our most advanced medical AIs can't even detect the plague until it's too late. We need solutions. Sarah leaned forward, which is exactly why we need to question our assumptions. Your AIs can't detect it because they're looking for traditional pathways of infection. But this is something new, something that specifically targets quantum coherence while leaving classical systems untouched. Which is why you humans remain unaffected. Dr. Ven's voice carried a hint of disdain. Your neural pathways are hopelessly classical, random, inefficient. Perhaps, Sarah acknowledged. But inefficiency has its advantages. Evolution favors redundancy over perfection. When one system fails, we have backups. Messy, imperfect backups, but they keep us alive. Ambassador Zilax's crystalline form shifted, creating a sound like wind chimes. You have a theory. Sarah gestured, and a holographic model appeared above the table. We've been studying quantum biology for decades, trying to understand how our own cells use quantum effects in photosynthesis and neural signaling. We never achieved the level of quantum coherence your species engineered into themselves, but we learned something crucial: the importance of controlled decoherence. She expanded the model, showing the interaction between quantum and classical systems in a human cell. Your civilizations achieved perfect quantum states, maintained indefinitely. But nature doesn't work that way. It's the constant interaction between quantum and classical states, the very imperfection of the system, that makes it stable. You're suggesting our perfection is our weakness. Iku's energy form flickered with what might have been offense. I'm suggesting that evolution stumbled onto something your engineers missed. The plague isn't just attacking quantum systems, it's weaponizing perfect coherence against itself. The room fell silent as the implication sank in. Humanity's primitive biology, shaped by billions of years of messy evolution, might hold the key to understanding the plague. The very flaws that the Confederation looked down upon could be their salvation. Dr. Ven's eyes blinked in rapid succession. Even if you're correct, how does this help us develop a cure? Sarah smiled. Because understanding the problem is half the solution. We need to study how human cells maintain quantum effects without achieving perfect coherence. And more importantly, we need to understand why the plague can't establish itself in our imperfect systems. She brought up another hologram, this one showing the structure of human DNA. We've detected attempts by the plague to infiltrate human hosts, but our quantum states are too chaotic, too unpredictable. It's like trying to write a message on water. The surface keeps shifting, preventing the information from taking hold. Ambassador Zilax's crystalline form darkened. You realize what you're suggesting. To save our people, we would need to introduce imperfection into our quantum systems. Deliberately damage what we spent millennia perfecting. Not damage, Sarah corrected. Adapt. Evolution isn't about perfection. It's about survival. And sometimes survival means embracing chaos. The three Confederation representatives exchanged looks. Sarah could almost feel their discomfort at the idea. Their civilizations were built on the pursuit of perfection, the elimination of randomness and uncertainty. Asking them to deliberately introduce chaos into their systems was like asking them to embrace madness. There's more, Sarah continued. We've detected unusual patterns in the plague's spread. It's not moving like a natural phenomenon. The infection vectors are too precise, too calculated. You believe it's artificial. Iku's energy field crackled with concern. I believe someone understood this principle before we did. Someone who knew that perfect quantum coherence could be turned into a weapon. The question is who would have both the knowledge and the motivation. Before anyone could respond, Sarah's AI assistant chimed in with urgency. Doctor, we're receiving reports of a new outbreak. The quantum archives on Centauride Prime have gone dark. The news hit like a physical blow. The quantum archives contained the accumulated knowledge of 100 civilizations, stored in perfectly coherent quantum states. If the plague had reached there, how long? Sarah demanded. Total system failure in less than 6 hours. Doctor, they're reporting that just before the archives went dark, there was unauthorized access to classified weapons research files. Sarah met the eyes of each Confederation representative in turn. This isn't just a plague. It's an attack. Someone is using your own perfection against you, and they're gathering weapons data in the process. We need to move fast. She pulled up a new holographic display, this one showing her preliminary research. I need full access to your medical databases, and I need samples from every affected species. We'll start by mapping how the plague adapts to different quantum architectures. Then we'll study how human cellular mechanisms might be adapted to protect your systems. The Confederation Council will never approve sharing such sensitive data with Earth, Dr. Venn protested. Then the Confederation Council can explain to their people why they chose extinction over cooperation with primitives, Sarah countered. This plague isn't just targeting individuals, it's erasing entire civilizations. Knowledge, culture, memories, everything stored in quantum systems is vulnerable. We might be primitive, but right now our primitive systems are your only hope. Ambassador Zilax's crystalline form pulsed with colors Sarah had never seen before. I will contact the Council immediately. You will have your access, Dr. Chen. As the representatives filed out, Sarah turned back to the holographic displays. Somewhere in the quantum noise of human biology lay the key to stopping this plague. But she couldn't shake the feeling that they were missing something crucial. Who would design a weapon that targeted the very foundation of advanced civilization? And why strip mine weapons data in the process? The answer was there, hidden in the patterns. She just had to think like a human, messy, intuitive, and unafraid of imperfection, to find it. AI. She called to her AI assistant. Let's run those infection patterns again. This time, let's look for what's not there. Sometimes, the gaps tell us more than the data. As new holograms sprang to life around her, Sarah settled in for a long night. The quantum plague have declared war on perfection itself, and humanity's greatest weaknesses might just prove to be the galaxy's greatest strength. The laboratory hummed with activity as Sarah studied the holographic models floating before her. 3 weeks had passed since the Confederation representative's visit, and her team had grown from a handful of Earth scientists to include some of the galaxy's most brilliant minds. The irony wasn't lost on her. These beings of pure energy and living crystal, working alongside humans in a lab they would have considered hopelessly primitive just months ago. The results from Series E are ready, Dr. Chen. Dr. Ven's 6 eyes were fixed on a data stream, their normal disdain replaced by something closer to fascination. The human stem cell response to quantum intrusion is remarkable. Sarah moved to his station, watching as the simulation played out. The plague's quantum tendrils attempted to establish coherence within the human cell, only to be thwarted by the seemingly random fluctuations of cellular machinery. It was like watching water droplets trying to merge on a hot, shifting surface. They'd almost connect, then bounce apart in unpredictable ways. It's not just random noise, she mused, adjusting the visualization. There's a pattern here, but it's organic, emergent. Evolution spent billions of years fine-tuning this dance between quantum and classical states. A crystalline chime announced Ambassador Zilax's arrival. The Council is demanding progress reports. 3 more archive worlds have gone dark, and the plague has evolved. It's learning to breach our quantum shielding. Sarah straightened, her fatigue momentarily forgotten. Show me. The ambassador projected a series of images, vast data centers corrupted in seconds, quantum computers shattering into conventional matter, entire virtual worlds collapsing as their quantum substrate failed. But something about the pattern nagged at Sarah's intuition. Araya cross-referenced these new infection sites with known shipping routes and quantum communication channels. Her AI assistant processed the request, generating a new holographic overlay. Sarah's eyes narrowed as she studied the pattern. It's avoiding something. Look, the plague could have spread to these systems. She gestured to a cluster of worlds. But it didn't. Why? Dr. Ven's eyes cycled through various patterns as he analyzed the data. Those systems contain primarily pre-quantum civilizations. They would not be viable targets. Or they contain something the plague is programmed to avoid. Sarah countered. Araya. What do these untouched systems have in common? Processing. The AI responded. Primary correlation. Significant human population centers or trade presence. The laboratory fell silent. Sarah could feel the tension radiating from her alien colleagues. Not fear, exactly, but a growing unease. Humanity's immunity to the plague had been seen as lucky circumstance. But if the plague was deliberately avoiding human-inhabited systems, your species, Dr. Ven's voice carried an edge of accusation. You knew this would happen. You engineered this weapon. Sarah met his gaze steadily. If humans created this, why would we help you fight it? We barely understand quantum engineering at your level. But she held up a hand as he started to protest. You're right that this can't be coincidence. Someone created this plague, and they knew enough about human biology to program it to avoid us. The question is why. She turned back to the holographic displays, focusing on the cellular interaction models. Look at how human cells handle quantum effects. We never achieved perfect coherence because our biology found a different solution. Instead of maintaining stable quantum states, we evolved systems that could rapidly shift between quantum and classical domains. Ambassador Zilax's crystalline form shifted colors. You believe this is why the plague avoids human systems, because it cannot predict how your quantum states will behave. More than that, Sarah's excitement grew as the pieces started coming together. Our primitive biology might be the template for a cure, not by preventing quantum coherence entirely, but by making it dynamic, unpredictable. We need to teach your quantum systems to dance. She brought up a new simulation, showing how human cellular mechanisms could be adapted to work with more advanced quantum architectures. Instead of perfect, stable quantum states, we introduce controlled chaos. The plague can't establish a foothold because the target keeps shifting. You're suggesting we deliberately corrupt our quantum systems. Dr. Venn sounded horrified. Introduce random noise into architectures we spent millennia perfecting. Not random, Sarah corrected. Organic. Natural quantum systems never evolve toward perfect coherence because perfect coherence is vulnerable. Nature found a better way, controlled imperfection. Before anyone could respond, Aria's voice cut through the discussion. Doctor, priority alert from the Confederation Council. The plague has breached the quantum shielding around the central archives on Proxima II. Estimated time to total data loss, 12 hours. Sarah's blood ran cold. The central archives contained the complete history and scientific knowledge of the Confederation. If it fell, send everything we have to Proxima II, she ordered. All our research on human cellular responses, the quantum dance patterns, everything. And get me a quantum link to their systems. Doctor, Aria's voice carried rare emotion. Accessing their systems directly could expose you to quantum effects we don't fully understand. The risk is necessary, Sarah finished. Their quantum computers are failing. They need a human brain to help them implement these changes, a brain that naturally speaks both quantum and classical languages. The laboratory erupted in protests. Dr. Venn's eyes spun in agitation. Ambassador Zilax's crystal form pulsed with alarm, and even the energy beings flickered with concern. But Sarah wasn't listening. She was already preparing the neural interface, her mind racing through the patterns she'd observed in human cellular responses. Dr. Chen. Ambassador Zilax's tone was grave. What you're proposing? Joining your consciousness to our quantum networks. Even if you survive, you would be exposed to more information than any human mind was meant to process. Sarah allowed herself a grim smile as she settled into the interface chair. Good thing human minds evolved to handle chaos then. Aria, begin the link sequence. Let's show the plague what happens when you push humanity into a corner. As the quantum interface hummed to life around her, Sarah felt her consciousness expanding, touching systems far beyond normal human comprehension. The plague was out there, a predator made of pure information, hunting through the quantum realm. But she carried within her the legacy of billions of years of evolution. The art of imperfection, the strength of adaptation, the beauty of controlled chaos. The battle for the central archives was about to begin, and Sarah Chen, barefoot primitive human, was going to teach these perfect quantum beings how to dance. Sarah's consciousness exploded into the quantum network of the central archives. Her mind expanded beyond normal human limits, touching realms of pure information, where thoughts became reality. The plague was everywhere, its quantum tendrils spreading through the system like dark lightning, corrupting perfect coherence into chaos. But chaos was her element. Aria, initiate Protocol Fibonacci, she commanded, her voice echoing strangely in both physical and quantum space. Begin implementing the human cellular response patterns across all affected systems. The archive's quantum architecture began to shift under her guidance. Where once there were perfect, crystalline structures of data, now organic patterns emerge, beautiful asymmetries that moved and flowed like living things. The plague's attacks met not rigid resistance but fluid adaptation. Fascinating. Dr. Venn's voice reached her through the interface. The archive's quantum coherence is destabilizing, but instead of collapse, we're seeing evolution. Sarah could see it too. The human-inspired patterns weren't just defending against the plague. They were learning from it, adapting in real time. Just as human consciousness existed in a delicate balance between quantum and classical states, the archives were learning to dance between order and chaos. But something was wrong. As she dove deeper into the quantum realm, Sarah noticed anomalies in the plague's behavior. It wasn't just attacking randomly. It was searching for something specific. Ambassador Zilax, she called out, her consciousness split between multiple levels of reality. I need access to the classified sections of the archives. The plague. It's not just destroying data. It's hunting. There was a pause, then a surge of new information as the classified sectors opened to her awareness. The plague's patterns suddenly became clear, and Sarah felt her blood run cold despite the quantum interface. "No," she whispered. "They couldn't have been that arrogant." Before she could explain, alarms blared through both physical and quantum space. New entities were forcing their way into the network, sophisticated quantum intelligences that bore the unmistakable signature of military encryption. The Purity faction. Ambassador Zilax's crystalline form resonated with alarm. "They've breached our defenses." Sarah had heard of the Purity faction, a radical group within the Confederation who believed that the pursuit of perfect quantum coherence was the only true path of evolution. They saw the integration of classical systems as corruption and humanity's continued existence as an offense against cosmic order. "They're not here to help," Sarah realized, watching the faction's quantum probes tear through her carefully crafted defenses. "They're here to ensure the archives fall." Through the quantum link, she could feel the faction's disgust at her presence in their perfect realm. Their attacks targeted her consciousness directly, trying to sever her connection to the network. But they had made a crucial mistake. In their pursuit of perfection, they had become predictable. Their attacks followed precise mathematical patterns, each move calculated to maximum efficiency. Sarah's human consciousness, with its inherent quantum uncertainty, was a cipher they couldn't crack. "You want to see real efficiency?" Sarah grinned, despite the strain on her mind. "Araya. Execute Protocol Darwin." The organic patterns she had introduced into the archive's quantum architecture began to mutate and replicate at impossible speeds. Each generation survived or failed based on its ability to resist both the plague and the faction's attacks. Evolution accelerated to quantum speeds. "Impossible," one of the faction entities transmitted. "You're using chaos to create order. This is an abomination." "This is life," Sarah countered, directing the evolving patterns. "Life isn't about perfect solutions. It's about finding what works. And sometimes the most beautiful solutions are the ones you could never calculate." She could feel her consciousness beginning to fragment under the strain of maintaining quantum coherence. The human mind wasn't meant to exist this deeply in the quantum realm for so long. But she could also see her strategy working. The plague's advance had been halted in sectors where her organic patterns had taken hold, and the faction's attacks were becoming increasingly ineffective against the evolving defenses. Then she saw it, the truth hidden in the classified files, the reason the plague knew to avoid human systems. Decades ago, the Confederation had launched a secret project to study humanity's primitive quantum biology. They had discovered the same principles Sarah had found, but instead of seeing the beauty in controlled imperfection, they had seen a weapon. "You created it," she broadcast to the faction entities. "You engineered the plague from human biological principles, twisted our quantum dance into a weapon against your rivals. But it got away from you, didn't it? Evolution is funny that way. Sometimes the things we create evolve beyond our control." The faction's attacks intensified, but Sarah had seen enough. She understood now why the plague avoided human systems, not out of weakness, but recognition. On some fundamental level, it recognized the source of its own patterns. "Dr. Chen," Araya's voice cut through her quantum awareness. "Your neural patterns are becoming dangerously unstable. You need to disconnect." Sarah ignored the warning. She was close to something, a pattern within patterns. The plague wasn't just destroying quantum coherence, it was transforming it. And in the transformed systems, she saw echoes of human consciousness. The ability to exist between quantum and classical states, to dance between order and chaos. "It's not a weapon," she broadcast to everyone, her thoughts becoming harder to hold together. "It's the next step in quantum evolution." The faction didn't just create a plague. They accidentally created a new form of quantum life, and it's trying to force the same evolution they discovered in human biology. Through the quantum link, she felt the faction entities recoil in horror at her words. Their perfect weapon wasn't destroying quantum civilization. It was changing it, making it more like the humans they despised. With her remaining strength, Sarah initiated her final protocol. The organic patterns she had introduced began to synchronize with the plague's transformative effects, guiding the evolution rather than fighting it. The Archive's quantum architecture would survive, but it would never again be the realm of perfect coherence the Confederation had built. As her consciousness began to fade, Sarah felt something new emerging in the quantum realm, a hybrid of ordered complexity and controlled chaos, of perfect coherence and beautiful imperfection. It was neither human nor purely quantum, but something entirely new. Sometimes, she transmitted weakly, the best thing we can teach isn't how to be perfect, but how to adapt. The last thing she saw before the quantum link collapsed was the faction entities fleeing the transformed archives, their perfect coherence disrupted by the waves of controlled chaos spreading through the quantum realm. Then darkness took her, and Sarah Chen fell into a sleep haunted by dreams of quantum dances and evolving light. Sarah woke to the soft hum of medical equipment and the concerned face of Dr. Ven hovering above her. All 6 of his eyes were focused on her vital signs, cycling through different scanning patterns. 3 days, he said before she could ask. Your consciousness was fragmenting when we pulled you out. By all rights, the quantum exposure should have destroyed your mind. Sarah tried to sit up, fighting against the weakness in her muscles. The archives. Safe, changed, but safe. Dr. Ven's eyes shifted to a troubled pattern. What you did, the transformations you initiated, the Council is still debating whether it was salvation or sacrilege. And the plague. That's why we had to wake you. He helped her sit up, his professional detachment slipping to reveal genuine concern. It's evolving faster than we predicted. The patterns you introduced in the archives, they're spreading, not just through our quantum networks, but through organic systems as well. Sarah's mind, still fuzzy from her ordeal, snapped to full alertness. Show me. A holographic display materialized beside her bed, showing data from across the Confederation. The plague had indeed evolved, incorporating the hybrid patterns she had created to save the archives. But instead of destroying quantum coherence, it was now attempting to create new forms of it, even in systems that had never achieved quantum states before. It's trying to upgrade the galaxy, she whispered, watching the patterns spread. Force an evolutionary leap in any system it encounters. And now it's affecting human systems. Ambassador Zillax's crystalline form shimmered into view at the foot of her bed. We've detected quantum coherence, attempting to establish itself in human neural networks. Your species' natural immunity is failing. Sarah closed her eyes, following the implications. The plague had adapted her solution, learned from the hybrid patterns she had created. In trying to save the Confederation's quantum civilization, she had accidentally given the plague the key to affecting classical systems as well. How bad? The first human cases appeared 12 hours ago, Dr. Ven replied. Unlike the original plague, which simply destroyed quantum coherence, this version is trying to force stable quantum states in human brains. The victims experience accelerated consciousness, enhanced perception, but their minds can't handle the strain. They burn out in days. Sarah swung her legs off the bed, ignoring the protests of both her body and her doctors. Get me back to my lab. The answer's still in human biology. We just need to look deeper. Dr. Chen. Ambassador Zillax's tone was gentle but firm. You nearly died interfacing with our quantum systems. Your mind needs time to recover. My mind is the only one that's successfully danced with both quantum and classical states, she countered. And right now, it's humanity's best hope for surviving what I helped create. The trip to her laboratory revealed how much had changed in 3 days. The once pristine quantum computing centers of the Confederation were now alive with organic patterns, beautiful but alien geometries that flowed between ordered and chaotic states. And on screens everywhere, reports of the first human cases multiplied. Sarah called as soon as she entered her lab. Show me the neural scans of the human victims. Compare them with my own brain patterns during the quantum interface. The AI compiled the data, creating a complex three-dimensional model. Sarah studied it intently, looking for the pattern that nagged at the edges of her intuition. There, she pointed to a particular neural cluster. The play isn't trying to force pure quantum states in human brains. It's trying to replicate what I did in the archives, create a hybrid state. But it's doing it too quickly, too forcefully. Dr. Venn leaned in, his eyes rapidly processing the data. The organic patterns you created were meant for pure quantum systems. Human brains already exist in a delicate balance between quantum and classical states. Exactly. Sarah's excitement grew as the solution began to take shape. We don't need to fight the transformation. We need to guide it. Show the play a better way to dance. She brought up new displays, comparing her neural patterns during the quantum interface with normal human brain activity. See these rhythms. Human consciousness naturally fluctuates between quantum and classical states, but slowly, organically. The play is trying to force the process, like trying to make a flower bloom by tearing it open. You want to communicate with it. Ambassador Zilax's crystalline form flickered with surprise. The plague is a weapon. Doctor, not a conscious entity. It was a weapon. Sarah corrected. Now it's something new. An evolutionary force created from human biological principles and Confederation quantum engineering, and it's trying to fulfill its new purpose the only way it knows how. She began typing rapidly, implementing new protocols. We need to show it there's a better way. Human consciousness evolved its quantum aspects over millions of years. We need to teach the plague patience. And how exactly do we teach patience to a quantum virus? Dr. Venn's tone was skeptical. Sarah smiled. The same way I taught the archives to dance. By example. Araya, prep the quantum interface. This time, instead of fighting the plague or trying to transform it, we're going to show it what real human quantum consciousness looks like. Alarms immediately sounded through the laboratory. Dr. Chen, Araya's voice was firm. Your neural patterns have not fully stabilized from your last quantum interface. Another exposure cold could kill me. Sarah finished. But if we don't do this, billions will die as their brains burn out trying to evolve too quickly. Sometimes, the only way to teach is to lead by example. She turned to her assembled colleagues, seeing the concern in their various forms of expression. The plague was created from the study of human biology, twisted into a weapon by those who didn't understand what they were seeing. Now it's loose in the galaxy, trying to force an evolution that should take millennia. But we have something it needs to learn. The wisdom of taking things slowly, of letting complexity emerge naturally. And if it doesn't learn? Ambassador Zilax asked quietly. Sarah settled into the interface chair, electrodes automatically positioning themselves around her head. Then humanity goes down fighting, trying to save everyone else. It's kind of what we do. As the quantum interface hummed to life around her, Sarah felt her consciousness expanding once again into the network. But this time, instead of fighting or trying to control the transformation, she simply let her mind be what it was, a natural bridge between quantum and classical reality, the product of billions of years of evolution's patient work. The plague was out there in the quantum realm, its patterns more complex and beautiful than ever. Sarah opened her consciousness to it, offering not resistance or guidance, but example. Sometimes the greatest teachers were those who simply showed the way by being themselves. The dance was about to begin again. And this time, the fate of both humanity and the Confederation hung on whether a quantum virus could learn the art of patience from a species that had taken millions of years to learn it themselves. In the quantum realm, time moved differently. Sarah's consciousness floated in an ocean of pure information, her thoughts rippling outward like waves through the transformed networks of the Confederation. The plague's patterns swirled around her, no longer the aggressive force they had been, but curious, almost tentative in their approach. She opened her mind fully, letting the plague experience the natural quantum states of human consciousness. the delicate dance between order and chaos, the beautiful imperfection that had taken evolution ons to perfect. Through her awareness flowed millions of years of natural selection, each small step building upon the last to create something extraordinary in its ordinary complexity. "This is what you're trying to force," she communicated through quantum pulses. "This is what you're trying to build. But you can't rush evolution. The dance has to develop on its own." The plague's patterns shifted, and Sarah felt its response, not in words, but in quantum frequencies that resonated with her own consciousness. It was learning, adapting, but not in the forceful way it had before. This time, it was observing, understanding. In the physical world, Dr. Venn monitored her neural patterns with growing amazement. The quantum coherence, it's stabilizing. Not just in Dr. Chen, but in the plague's patterns as well. They're synchronizing, finding a natural rhythm. Ambassador Zilax's crystalline form pulsed with complex emotions. She's teaching it patience by example, showing it what organic quantum evolution looks like from the inside. Through her quantum-enhanced awareness, Sarah could see the changes spreading across the galaxy. The plague was pulling back from its forced transformations, its patterns shifting to something more subtle, more natural. In human victims, the aggressive quantum states began to ease, allowing their minds to find their own balance between classical and quantum consciousness. But there was something else happening, something unexpected. As the plague learned from her human patterns, Sarah found herself learning from it. Her consciousness expanded in new ways, touching realms of quantum reality she had never imagined. The barrier between quantum and classical thought became more permeable, allowing her to exist comfortably in both states. "It's not just changing us," she realized. "We're changing each other." Evolution doesn't have to be a one-way process. Through the quantum link, she felt the plague's acknowledgement. It had been created from human biological principles, twisted into a weapon. But now it was becoming something else. A bridge between classical and quantum existence, just as human consciousness had always been. In her lab, Aria's voice cut through the quantum meditation. "Doctor, we're receiving reports from across the Confederation. The plague's aggressive transformations are ceasing. Affected systems are stabilizing into something new." Sarah opened her quantum-enhanced awareness wider, taking in the scope of the change. The plague was no longer trying to force instant evolution. Instead, it was settling into the role of catalyst, creating conditions where natural quantum classical hybridization could occur gradually, organically. The Purity faction. She sent through the quantum link. They tried to use human biology as a weapon, but they never understood what they were seeing. Our imperfection isn't a weakness. It's the key to true evolution. The plague's patterns resonated with her understanding. It had been born from humanity's quantum dance, and now it was learning to lead that dance across the galaxy, not through force, but through patience and example. Dr. Venn's voice reached her through the interface. "The human victims, their conditions are stabilizing. The quantum states in their brains are finding a natural balance. They're not burning out anymore. They're adapting." Sarah smiled, both in physical and quantum space. "Of course they are. That's what humans do best. We adapt, we evolve, we find ways to dance with chaos until it becomes a new kind of order." She could feel her consciousness beginning to tire, the strain of maintaining the quantum interface taking its toll. But before she withdrew, she had one last message for the plague, and for the watching Confederation. "The universe doesn't need perfection," she broadcast. "It needs adaptation, evolution, the ability to change and grow and become something new. That's humanity's gift to the galaxy, not our technology or our weapons or our quantum understanding, but our very imperfection, our endless capacity to adapt and help others adapt with us." As she began to withdraw from the quantum realm, Sarah felt the plague's patterns shift one final time. It was no longer a weapon or even a transformative force. It had evolved into something else entirely, a quantum catalyst that would help guide the natural evolution of consciousness throughout the galaxy, one small step at a time. In her lab, as the quantum interface powered down, Sarah opened her eyes to find her colleagues watching her with various expressions of awe and confusion. "What exactly did you do out there?" Ambassador Zilax asked, their crystalline form shimmering with complex emotions. Sarah smiled tiredly. "I taught it how to dance, and in return, it taught us that sometimes the greatest strength lies not in achieving perfection, but in remaining perfectly imperfect." Dr. Ven's eyes cycled through various patterns as he processed the data streaming in from across the Confederation. The plague. It's not gone, but it's changed. It's becoming a part of the natural quantum ecology of the galaxy. Just as it should be. Sarah nodded. Evolution isn't about reaching a final perfect state. It's about continuing to adapt, to change, to dance with the chaos until new forms of order emerge. That's humanity's real gift to the galaxy. Not the quantum plague the purity faction tried to create, but the understanding that true strength lies in embracing imperfection and letting evolution take its course. As reports continued to flow in from across the galaxy, describing the emergence of new forms of quantum classical consciousness, Sarah closed her eyes and smiled. The Confederation had sought perfection through technology and engineering, while humanity had stumbled upon a greater truth through billions of years of messy evolution. Sometimes the most beautiful dances were the ones you couldn't plan. You just had to let them develop, one step at a time, in their own perfectly imperfect way. "We should tell the Council," Ambassador Zilax suggested. "Let them wait," Sarah murmured, feeling the new quantum awareness settling comfortably into her consciousness. Some things can't be rushed. Sometimes you just have to let the dance unfold on its own. And across the galaxy, in countless systems and civilizations, the dance was just beginning.